Now, for more on Japan-U.S. relations, Senior Associate Professor Stephen Nagy joins us via Skype from Tokyo. He's from the Department of Politics and International Studies at the International Christian University. Dr. Nagy, firstly, both Mr. Abe and Mr. Trump struck positive tones on trade discussions, but refused to give details on an agreement. Can we expect a U.S.-Japan trade deal anytime soon?
I don't think we can expect any trade deal anytime soon, but we can look at this this 4-day visit in terms of being policy light, but being very heavy in symbolism, highlighting the strength of the U.S. alliance, their enduring friendship, and I think the breadth of their friendship in terms of culture, history, and of course their very long-standing military alliance.
Speaking of this heavy on symbolism, breadth of friendship, how does Mr. Trump then expect to even out what he called a trade imbalance with Japan? Will it turn into a trade war, like that with China?
At this stage, I don't think so. I think President Trump's calculation is basically that the trade war has broad bipartisan support in Washington and amongst American people. There's a general sentiment in the United States that things need to change with China. But in the Japanese case, this just isn't the case. And it's the opposite. There's broad bipartisan support for the Japan-U.S. alliance. Ordinary American people feel very endeared to the Japanese, and the Japanese have worked very hard to cultivate that image, both in terms of just cultivating the image, but also, I think, importantly, in terms of investing in the United States and using this visit to highlight how much Japan has contributed to the alliance, but how much it's contributed to making America great.
Well, one thing that they can agree on is security, perhaps. Japan is buying more than 100 stealth warplanes from America. What's the significance of this deal, and how will it impact relations between Japan and its regional neighbors?
We can understand this at 3 levels. I think first and foremost is that Japan is trying to send a very strong signal that it's sharing its fair share of the alliance in terms of burden sharing by purchasing these very high-tech planes. It shows that Japan is invested in its security, but also security of the alliance. Second, Japan's trying to find ways to close the deficit, and buying military equipment is one of the easiest ways that Japan can really demonstrate that it's trying to close the deficit that exists between Japan and the United States. Third, I think that Prime Minister Abe is really very much interested in demonstrating that Japan is willing to defend itself against some very serious challenges within the region. First and foremost, I think, is North Korea and its conventional and weapons of mass destruction, which Japan is very much at the front line of these weapon systems. And second is the reality of the structural challenges with China exerting more diplomatic force within the region, perceived assertive behavior in the South China Sea and the East China Sea, and its long-term intentions within the region. Japan wants to send a signal that it's willing to step up to the plate individually, but also wants to support the alliance at a bilateral level.
All right, let's bring in Japan. You said that, defending challenges in the region, namely, one of them is North Korea. Japan has been trying to set up a meeting with, Chairman Kim Jong-un. Do you think Prime Minister Abe will actually be able to help restart nuclear talks?
I don't, but I think that a bilateral meeting may be in the books between Kim Jong-un and Prime Minister Abe, for the simple fact that I think Kim Jong-un is looking to broaden his connections with stakeholders within the region. He's trying to find ways to get economic aid to develop the economy, but this is, I think, on the North Korean side, dealing from denuclearization. I think the post-Hanoi summit results has really shown that, most of the most pessimistic or conservative views or realistic views of the reality of denuclearization has come to fruition. And if Japan wants to deal with North Korea, it's going to have to engage in diplomacy with North Korea without any ties. And that means putting the abductee issues to the side and just trying to start dialogue in some ways to whether contribute to demilitarization, denuclearization, or normalizing North Korea in such a way that it becomes less of a security threat within the region.
Well, staying with the theme of diplomacy, conflict between the U.S. and Iran has been escalating. Mr. Abe has offered to help broker dialogue between the two sides. Is Japan really well placed to play mediator and help ease tensions?
Well, in this sense, I think that Japan has been able to maintain its relationship with both Washington and Tehran since the 1970s. During the oil shock, when the United States was put pressure on Japan to join an embargo against Iran, what did we, the oil-producing states, what we saw is Japan say, no, we're going to continue our relationships because oil is important for our economy. Now, Japan has maintained that relationship really up until now. We just had a high-level Iranian envoy visit last week in Tokyo. And I think Japan is trying to position itself in some kind of mediator position to create the bridge for discussions between Washington and Tehran. Whether it can do this effectively, we're not sure yet, but it is placed well because it has good communication with both capitals, and it may be able to find a window of opportunity to promote communication between Washington and Tehran.
Well, thank you very much for your thoughts this evening. Senior Associate Professor Stephen Nagy from the International Christian University in Tokyo.